The massive Holstein crashed through the pristine poolside party like a wrecking ball of chaos, sending champagne glasses flying and designer dresses soaking. Children screamed as 1.200 pounds of panicked beef thundered past the cabana, but it wasn't the cow that would destroy everything, it was Karen's finger, pointed directly at us. Her voice cutting through the mayhem. THOSE people did this on purpose. What happened next would tear apart two families, expose a web of lies that ran deeper than anyone imagined, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous predator at a pool party walks on two legs, not four. The first thing Maya Rodriguez noticed about the Westfield Estates pool party wasn't the imported Italian tiles or the floating orchids, it was how Karen Blackwood's smile never reached her eyes. "So wonderful that you could make it," Karen said, her voice dripping with the kind of politeness that felt like a slap wrapped in silk. She kissed Maya's cheek, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume that couldn't quite mask the underlying scent of disdain. Maya forced a smile. "Thank you for inviting us. The kids are so excited." Behind Karen's perfectly veneered teeth, Maya caught the flash of something cold. "Well, we do try to be inclusive here in Westfield." The word inclusive hung in the air like a challenge. Maya's husband, Carlos, squeezed her shoulder, a gentle warning to let it slide. Their 8-year-old daughter Sophia tugged on Maya's sundress, oblivious to the adult tensions crackling overhead. "Mama, can I go swimming now?" "Please, of course, Mija." Maya kissed the top of Sophia's dark head, watching her daughter bound toward the crystal blue water where a dozen other children were already splashing. The Blackwoods' backyard was a monument to excess, her infinity pool that seemed to spill into the horizon, her outdoor kitchen that rivaled most restaurants, and a guest list that read like the Westfield social register. Maya and Carlos were the only Latino family present, a fact that hadn't escaped Karen's notice, or her pointed comments about diversifying the neighborhood gatherings. Carlos, ever the diplomat, had insisted they attend. "We can't let her intimidate us," he'd said that morning while straightening his tie. "We belong here as much as anyone." Maya wasn't so sure. 3 months since they'd moved into their dream house on Maple Ridge Drive, and Karen Blackwood had made her position crystal clear through 1,000 tiny cuts. The Homeowners Association complaints about their garden decorations, the concerned comments about Carlos's work truck parked in their driveway, the way conversation died whenever Maya approached other mothers at school pickup. "Maya." "Carlos." Tom Blackwood materialized beside them, his politician's smile more genuine than his wife's. As president of the Homeowners Association, Tom at least pretended to practice what he preached about community harmony. "Glad you could make it. Beautiful day for a pool party." Tom gestured toward the gathering crowd. "Karen's been planning this for weeks. She's certainly outdone herself," Carlos said diplomatically, accepting a beer from a passing server, "that she has." Tom's expression flickered, there and gone so quickly Maya almost missed it. "Speaking of which, I should probably mention, we've had a few more noise complaints about your property." "Nothing serious, but noise complaints." Maya's voice sharpened. "What noise?" "Your dog, apparently. Barking early in the morning. Mrs. Henderson from 2 doors down called it in." Maya and Carlos exchanged glances. "They didn't have a dog." "Tom," Carlos said carefully, "we don't own a dog." Tom's face went blank for a moment before he forced a laugh. "Well, that's her home. Maybe she was mistaken about which house. You know how these things go." But Maya knew exactly how these things went. She'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood where everyone minded their own business. She'd watched her parents save every penny to send her to college, had worked 2 jobs to put herself through law school, and had married Carlos when he was still a struggling contractor with more dreams than dollars. Together, they'd built something beautiful. His construction company was thriving, her family law practice was growing, and they'd finally saved enough to buy their house in Westfield Estates. They'd earned their place here. But owning it and being welcomed were 2 entirely different things. "Excuse me." Karen's voice cut across the patio like a blade. "Could someone please handle this situation?" Maya turned to see Karen pointing toward the back fence, her face twisted in disgust. Beyond the manicured hedge that separated the Blackwoods property from the farmland behind, a large brown and white cow had wandered close to the fence line, peacefully grazing on the wild grass. "It's just a cow," called out Jim Patterson, one of Tom's golf buddies. "Probably from the Henderson farm." Harmless enough. Harmless. Karen's voice climbed an octave. It's filthy. What if it gets through the fence? What if the fence is solid, Carlos interjected. And cows are gentle creatures. Nothing to worry about. Karen's gaze snapped to him like a whip crack. Easy for you to say. You're probably used to this sort of thing. The conversation around the pool died. Maya felt the familiar heat of anger rise in her chest, but Carlos's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture of solidarity. What exactly do you mean by that? Maya asked quietly. Karen's smile returned, sharp as broken glass. Oh, nothing personal. I just meant that those of us who've lived in more urban environments might have different comfort levels with livestock wandering around children. Karen, Tom warned under his breath. But Karen was just getting started. I mean, we pay premium prices to live in a community with certain standards. Certain expectations. Maya opened her mouth to respond, but Sophia's delighted squeal cut through the tension. Look, Mama. The cow is so pretty. All eyes turned to the fence line, where the Holstein had wandered closer, her massive head visible over the hedge. Several children had left the pool to get a better look, pressing their faces against the slats to peer at the gentle giant. Children, get away from there, Karen commanded. Everyone back to the pool area immediately, but Mom, whined her son. Bryce, a pudgy 12-year-old with his mother's entitled attitude, it's just a stupid cow. Don't argue with me, Bryce. I said move. The children reluctantly obeyed, but their fascination with the unexpected visitor was obvious. The cow, for her part, seemed equally curious about the gathering, occasionally lifting her head to observe the colorful humans beyond the fence. This is exactly what I was talking about, Karen announced to the crowd. This is what happens when rural elements creep into established neighborhoods. Property values, aesthetic standards, it all goes downhill. Maya had heard enough. Karen. It's one cow on someone else's property. It's not exactly the apocalypse. Don't patronize me, Karen snapped. Some of us have worked very hard to maintain the character of this community. And what character is that, exactly? The question came from an unexpected source, Linda Morrison, one of the longtime residents Maya had never spoken to before. Karen's face flushed. I think that's obvious. Is it? Linda pressed. Because from where I'm standing, the character of this community seems to be changing for the better. New families bringing fresh energy, different perspectives. Different perspectives, Karen repeated, her voice dripping with disdain. Is that what we are calling it? The pool area had gone completely silent now, even the children sensing the adult drama unfolding. Maya felt caught between fury and humiliation, wanting desperately to leave but refusing to give Karen the satisfaction. That's when the cow made her move. Perhaps it was the scent of the elaborate buffet, or maybe she was simply curious about the strange gathering of humans. Whatever the motivation, the Holstein had discovered a gap in the hedge where two sections didn't quite meet, a gap just wide enough for a determined cow to squeeze through. The first sign of trouble was a rustling in the hedge. Then a loud crack as a wooden fence slat gave way. Tom Blackwood looked up from his conversation just in time to see 1,200 pounds of black and white beef burst through his carefully manicured landscaping like a bovine cannonball. Time seemed to slow as the cow emerged onto the pristine patio. Her hooves skittering on the Italian tile, her massive head swinging left and right as she took in the sea of shocked faces. For a moment, human and bovine stared at each other in mutual bewilderment. Then chaos erupted. The cow, startled by the sudden movement and screaming, bolted forward. Not toward the children, not toward the food, but directly toward the pristine infinity pool where floating orchids bobbed like tiny islands in the chlorinated paradise. Oh my God! Karen's scream pierced the afternoon air as the Holstein launched herself into the deep end with all the grace of a falling refrigerator. The splash was biblical. Water erupted in all directions, soaking the silk-dressed socialites and sending champagne glasses flying. The cow surfaced immediately, her massive head above water, eyes wide with panic as she struggled to understand what had happened. Children screamed and scattered. Adults dove for cover. The carefully orchestrated pool party disintegrated into Absolute pandemonium as 1,200 pounds of confused cattle thrashed in the Blackwood's luxury swimming pool. But even as Maya watched the magnificent disaster unfold, even as she saw Tom Blackwood's face cycle through disbelief, horror, and despair, even as she heard Karen's voice rise above the chow, the cow reached the shallow end and scrambled out of the pool with surprising grace, water cascading from her massive frame as she stood on the Italian tile, looking remarkably dignified for a bovine who'd just destroyed a $5,000 pool party. She shook herself like a giant dog, sending another spray of chlorinated water across the already soaked guests. But Maya barely noticed. All she could focus on was Karen Blackwood's finger, still pointed directly at her and Carlos, like a weapon, and the way the crowd was turning to stare at them with a mixture of suspicion and accusation. "Are you insane?" Maya stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "How exactly would we have made a cow jump into your pool?" "Don't play dumb with me," Karen snarled, her designer dress clinging to her body, mascara running in dark streaks down her cheeks. "This is exactly the kind of stunt. Carlos's voice was dangerously quiet. "You think we orchestrated a cow breaking into your backyard?" "I think," Karen said, her voice rising to carry across the patio, "that some people will do anything to bring down property values in this neighborhood. Create chaos, lower the standards, make it easier for certain elements to move in." The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Maya felt the familiar fire of injustice burning in her chest, but this time it was different. This time, Karen had crossed a line in front of witnesses and Maya was done being polite. "Say what you really mean, Karen." Maya's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Stop hiding behind your coded language and just say it. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you?" Maya took another step forward. "The noise complaints about a dog we don't own. The concerns about Carlos's work truck. The comments about urban environments and certain elements. You've been trying to drive us out since the day we moved in. That's ridiculous, is it?" The voice came from Linda Morrison, who was wringing pool water from her cardigan. "Because I've been listening to your complaints about the Rodriguez family for months now, Karen. At every HOA meeting, every coffee morning, every chance you get." Karen's face went pale beneath her running makeup. You were. "Simply what?" Another voice joined the fray, Jim Patterson, Tom's golf buddy, his polo shirt soaked and his expression grim. "Because I heard you on the phone with that real estate agent last week, asking about strategies to maintain neighborhood demographics." The crowd was shifting now, the initial chaos of the cow incident giving way to something more uncomfortable. Maya could see the calculations happening in real time, longtime residents reassessing months of Karen's comments, newer families realizing they weren't the only targets, and the children watching their parents with wide, confused eyes. Tom Blackwood finally found his voice. "Everyone, please. Let's just calm down and no." Maya's voice cut across his diplomatic platitudes like a blade. "I'm done being calm. I'm done pretending that your wife's behavior is acceptable. And I'm especially done with her trying to blame us for an act of nature." "Act of nature?" Karen's laugh was shrill. "That fence has been solid for 10 years. Suddenly, the day you people show up to my party, it conveniently fails." "I don't think so." "You think we sabotaged your fence?" Carlos asked incredulously. "I think you people will do anything to stop saying you people." The new voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. Maya turned to see an elderly man she didn't recognize stepping forward from the crowd. He was maybe 70, wearing a simple polo shirt and khakis, but something about his bearing commanded attention. "Excuse me." Karen's voice wavered slightly. "I said stop saying you people. It's ugly and we all know exactly what you mean by it." The man's eyes were sharp as flint. "I'm Judge Harrison, retired. Been living 2 streets over for 15 years. And I've been watching this little drama play out with considerable interest." Maya felt a chill of recognition. Judge Marcus Harrison, she'd argued cases in his courtroom before his retirement. He was known for his fairness and his complete intolerance for prejudice in any form. "Judge Harrison," Tom stammered, "we didn't know you were here." At a neighborhood party I was specifically not invited to. Harrison's eyebrows rose. Interesting oversight, considering I've lived here longer than half the people present. Karen's face went from pale to red. We couldn't invite everyone. No, but you could invite the new Latino family to make a show of inclusion, then spend the entire party making them unwelcome. Harrison's voice was conversational, but Maya heard the steel beneath it. I've been standing by your back gate for the past hour, watching this performance with fascination. You were trespassing. I was standing on the public walking trail that runs behind your property. The same trail where I take my evening constitutional every day. The same trail that gives me a perfect view of your back fence. Harrison smiled. Thinly. Including the section where you had your landscapers deliberately weaken the fence posts last week. The patio went dead silent. Even the cow seemed to sense the shift in atmosphere, turning her massive head toward the judge with what looked like interest. That's absurd, Tom sputtered. Is it? Because I have photographs. Harrison pulled out his phone with the deliberate movements of someone who'd been planning this moment. Amazing what they can capture these days. The work crew, the deliberately loosened posts, the gaps created in the hedge. All time-stamped, of course. Maya's mind was racing. You're saying they sabotaged their own fence? I'm saying someone wanted to create a situation where the neighboring farm's livestock might wander through. Whether for insurance purposes, or to create a spectacle that could be blamed on certain parties, or well, that's for others to determine. Karen's face had gone ashen. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can. You see, insurance fraud is a serious matter. Especially when it involves endangering children and guests. Harrison's smile was razor-sharp. I've already sent copies of everything to the relevant authorities. The implication hit Maya like a physical blow. They'd been set up. Karen hadn't just been making them unwelcome, she'd been planning to frame them for property damage, possibly to justify forcing them out of the neighborhood or to create grounds for a lawsuit that would bankrupt them. This is insane, Carlos breathed. Is it? Harrison asked. Create a dangerous situation, ensure the right people are present to blame, collect insurance money for pool damage and mental trauma to the children. Rather elegant, really, if sociopathic. I don't have to listen to this, Karen snapped, but Maya noticed she wasn't denying it. Actually, you do. Another new voice joined the conversation. Maya turned to see a woman in a wet business suit approaching, her badge visible on her soaked blazer. Detective Sarah Chen, County Sheriff's Office. I was here as Mrs. Patterson's guest. Maya remembered now, Jim Patterson's wife was an attorney who worked closely with law enforcement. The connections in this neighborhood ran deep, but apparently not all of them ran in Karen's favor. Detective, Tom began, his politician's instincts finally kicking in. Surely this is all just a misunderstanding, fraud, endangerment, and conspiracy aren't misunderstandings, Mr. Blackwood. Chen's voice was professionally neutral. Especially when we have photographic evidence and multiple witnesses to the planning stages. Planning stages? Maya asked. Chen nodded grimly. Judge Harrison contacted our office 3 days ago with his concerns. We've been monitoring the situation since then. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Karen's insistence that they attend the party. The pointed comments about the cow earlier. The way she'd immediately blamed them when chaos erupted. It had all been orchestrated. You're all out of your minds, Karen said, but her voice lacked conviction. I would never what? Risk children's safety to frame your neighbors. Chen stepped closer. Because that's exactly what happened here. That cow could have seriously injured someone. Kids were playing in that pool area. Maya looked around at the crowd, the shocked faces, the water-damaged patio, the magnificent Holstein who was now contentedly munching on Karen's prized rose bushes. Children were still crying, parents were still trying to process what they'd witnessed, and in the middle of it all stood Karen Blackwood, her mask finally slipping to reveal the ugly truth beneath. Mama? Sophia's small voice cut through the adult conversation. Maya turned to see her daughter standing at the edge of the crowd, her swimsuit still dripping, her eyes wide with confusion. Are we in trouble? The innocence in that question, the fear that they might somehow be responsible for this chaos, broke something inside Maya. She knelt down and pulled Sophia close, meeting her daughter's eyes. No, Mija. We are not in trouble. But some people are. As if summoned by her words, the sound of sirens began to echo through the Westfield estates, growing louder as they approached the Blackwood residence. Maya stood, keeping Sophia close, and watched as Karen's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally, a kind of desperate calculation. This is all a mistake, Karen said, but she was already backing toward her house. A terrible misunderstanding. The only mistake, Judge Harrison said quietly, was thinking you could get away with it. As the first police car pulled into the Blackwoods driveway, its red and blue lights painting the water-soaked patio in alternating colors, Maya realized that Karen had been right. The Westfield Estates Community Center had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. 3 weeks after the pool party heard around the neighborhood, every folding chair was occupied, the air thick with tension and the lingering scent of fresh coffee that no one seemed to be drinking. Maya sat in the front row, a stack of legal documents in her lap, watching Tom Blackwood struggle to maintain order from behind the small podium. His face had aged a decade since that Saturday afternoon, deep lines etched around his eyes, his politician's smile nowhere to be found. Order, please, Tom called out as voices rose throughout the room. We need to maintain decorum. Decorum? The shout came from the back of the room. Maya recognized the voice, Mrs. Chen from Elm Street, whose granddaughter had been at the pool party. You want to talk about decorum when your wife tried to frame innocent people? A chorus of agreement rippled through the crowd. Maya turned to see the room divided in ways she'd never imagined, longtime residents who'd supported the Blackwoods for years sitting across the aisle from neighbors who were seeing their community leadership in an entirely new light. Karen's actions, Tom began carefully, were her own. They don't reflect, don't they? Judge Harrison stood slowly from his seat in the third row. Even at 70, he commanded the room with quiet authority. Because according to the documents Mrs. Rodriguez shared with us, there's a pattern. Here that goes back years. Maya's fingers tightened on the file folder. She'd spent the past 3 weeks diving deep into Westfield Estates records, and what she'd found had shaken her faith in everything she thought she knew about their community. As a licensed attorney and resident of this community, Maya said. Rising to her feet, I've conducted a thorough review of the Homeowners Association records, complaint files, and correspondence. With the court's permission, I'd like to present my findings. You don't need the court's permission, Harrison said with a slight smile. This isn't a trial. Though perhaps it should be. Maya moved to the front of the room, acutely aware of every eye upon her. 3 weeks ago, she'd been the outsider, the target, the one being blamed for chaos she didn't create. Now, she held in her hands the power to expose a conspiracy that went to the very heart of their community. Ladies and gentlemen, she began. Opening the first folder, what happened at the Blackwood pool party wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a systematic campaign to manipulate property values and community demographics through targeted harassment and fraud. The room fell silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Over the past 5 years, there have been 47 formal complaints filed with the HOA against families of color, compared to 3 against white families. The complaints follow identical patterns: noise ordinances for families without pets, parking violations for legally parked vehicles, landscaping infractions that don't exist in our covenants. Maya opened a second folder. Furthermore, I found correspondence between Karen Blackwood and Westfield Premium Realty discussing strategic property acquisition and community demographic management. In layman's terms, artificially driving down certain properties to facilitate specific types of sales. That's illegal, called out Linda Morrison, who'd become an unexpected ally since the pool incident. Extremely illegal, Maya confirmed. It's called blockbusting, and it carries both civil and criminal penalties. Tom Blackwood had gone pale. Maya, I think you're misinterpreting, am I? Maya pulled out a thick stack of printed emails. Because I have documentation showing that Karen worked directly with certain real estate agents to identify problematic families, create harassment campaigns to drive them out, then coordinate below-market sales to preferred buyers. The room erupted. Voices rose in anger, shock, disbelief. Maya saw neighbors turning to stare at each other with new understanding, pieces of their own experiences suddenly clicking into place. The Patel family on Oak Street, someone called out. They moved out after 6 months of complaints about their garden. The Johnsons on Maple Ridge, another voice added. Karen led a petition about their teenage son's basketball hoop. Order. Tom banged a gavel that seemed pitifully small against the rising tide of revelation. Please, let's maintain some civility. Civility. Carlos stood up from his seat beside Maya, his voice carrying the controlled anger of a man who'd been pushed too far. Your wife endangered children to frame us for property damage. She's facing criminal charges for insurance fraud and conspiracy. And you want to talk about civility? Carlos, I understand you're upset. Carlos stepped forward, and Maya saw something in her husband she'd rarely witnessed, a fury so pure it was almost frightening. Tom, your wife tried to destroy my family. She put children in danger. She committed multiple felonies. And the only reason you're still sitting in that chair instead of in a cell beside her is because we can't prove you knew about it. I didn't know, Tom said quickly. I swear, I had no idea, didn't you? Maya opened another folder, this one containing bank records that had taken considerable legal maneuvering to obtain. Because the shell company that paid for the fence modifications. It's registered to your construction firm. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom's face cycled through confusion, realization, and something that might have been panic. That's impossible. Is it? Because Blackwood Development Solutions LLC has been the contractor for every accidental property damage incident in Westfield Estates for the past 3 years. Convenient insurance claims, prompt repairs, and remarkably consistent patterns of failure. Maya saw the moment when Tom understood the full scope of what she'd uncovered. His wife hadn't just been a racist trying to drive out unwanted neighbors, she'd been running a sophisticated insurance fraud operation, using manufactured disasters to generate income while simultaneously achieving her demographic goals. The Ramirez families saw backup, Maya continued relentlessly. The Kim family's electrical fire. The Williams family's foundation settling. All repaired by your company, all resulting in insurance payouts that exceeded actual damages by substantial margins. I didn't know, Tom repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe you didn't, Maya conceded. But your signature is on the contracts. Your company received the payments. And your name is on the insurance claim forms. Detective Chen stood up from her seat near the back of the room. Maya hadn't expected her to attend, but apparently the investigation had expanded far beyond a simple case of pool-party sabotage. Mr. Blackwood, Chen said formally, I'm going to need you to come with me. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But we have some questions about your company's billing practices and your involvement in what appears to be a multi-year conspiracy to defraud insurance companies and violate federal housing discrimination laws. The room watched in stunned silence as Tom Blackwood, pillar of the community, HOA president, the man who'd welcomed them all to Westfield Estates with promises of neighborhood harmony, was escorted out of the community center in handcuffs. Maya sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. The folders in her lap represented weeks of sleepless nights, countless hours of investigation, and the systematic dismantling of everything she'd thought she knew about her dream neighborhood. Maya. Judge Harrison approached her as the crowd began to disperse, voices buzzing with shock and speculation. That was remarkable work. It was necessary work, she replied wearily. I just wish it hadn't been necessary. What will you do now? Maya looked around the community center, at the neighbors who were seeing their community in an entirely new light, at the empty chair where Tom Blackwood had sat, at the stacks of evidence that proved how deep the corruption had run. We'll rebuild, she said finally. We'll elect new leadership, establish new policies, and make sure this never happens again. And the Blackwood's house? Maya smiled for the first time in weeks. Funny you should ask. It's going up for auction next month. Turns out insurance fraud and conspiracy charges make it difficult to keep up with mortgage payments. As the community center emptied around them, Maya gathered her files and prepared to head home. Outside, she could hear the distant sound of mooing. The Holstein had become something of a neighborhood celebrity, and the Henderson farm had started offering tours for the children who'd been at the infamous pool party. Justice, Maya reflected, sometimes came in the strangest packages. A cow jumping into a swimming pool had exposed a conspiracy that had poisoned their community for years. And now, as they prepared to pick up the pieces and build something better, Maya realized that sometimes the most destructive forces in a neighborhood aren't the ones that break fences, they are the ones that build walls between people who should be neighbors. But walls, she'd learned, could be torn down just as easily as they'd been built up. Blackwood Estate, watching a very different kind of gathering unfold around the infamous infinity pool. The November air carried the scent of autumn leaves and the sound of children's laughter, real laughter this time, not the careful, performative joy of Karen's orchestrated social events. "Mama, look!" Sophia called out from the shallow end, where she was teaching a group of younger children how to float. Mrs. Henderson brought Bessie to visit. Maya turned to see the massive Holstein standing placidly by the pool's edge, wearing what appeared to be a festive autumn wreath around her neck. Eleanor Henderson, the 70-year-old farmer who owned the land behind their neighborhood, was scratching behind the cow's ears with obvious affection. "She's become quite the celebrity," Eleanor said, approaching Maya with a weathered smile. "Tour groups come by twice a week now. The cow that exposed corruption, they call her." Maya laughed, still amazed by the surreal turn their lives had taken. "I never thought I'd be grateful to a cow, but here we are. Life has a way of surprising us." Eleanor's expression grew more serious. "How are you holding up? I know the trial preparation has been intense." Maya nodded, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. As the key witness in the federal case against Karen and Tom Blackwood, she'd spent countless hours with prosecutors, building an airtight case that now included charges of mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. "It's been hard," Maya admitted, "but necessary." "And the neighborhood? How's the transition going?" Maya looked around the transformed space. Where Karen's pool parties had been exercises in exclusion and social intimidation, these monthly community gatherings were the opposite, genuinely inclusive, multi-generational celebrations where children played freely while adults shared food, stories, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. "Better than I expected," Maya said. "Most people are genuinely horrified by what they learned. They want to do better." "Most people?" Maya's expression darkened slightly. "There are holdouts. Friends of the Blackwoods who think we are troublemakers who destroyed a perfectly good community. They've been vocal." She didn't mention the anonymous letters, the late-night phone calls, or the vandalism that had targeted not just her family but several others who'd spoken out against the Blackwoods regime. The FBI was investigating those incidents as part of a broader pattern of intimidation, but fear still lingered in the community. "Maya." A familiar voice called out across the patio. She turned to see Judge Harrison approaching, his arm linked with an elegant woman Maya recognized as his wife, retired Professor Janet Harrison. "Judge, Mrs. Harrison. I'm so glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," Janet said warmly. "Marcus has been telling me about your work with the new community charter. It sounds revolutionary." Maya felt a flush of pride. In the wake of the Blackwoods' downfall, she'd been elected to head a committee tasked with completely reimagining their homeowners association. What they'd created was radical in its simplicity, genuine democratic governance, transparent financial management, and explicit anti-discrimination policies with real enforcement mechanisms. "It's not revolutionary," Maya said. "It's just what a community should be." "In theory, yes," Marcus Harrison replied. "In practice, you've created something genuinely innovative. I've been sharing your charter with colleagues across the state. Other communities want to implement similar reforms." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the pool house. Maya turned to see a black sedan pulling into the driveway, an expensive car that looked distinctly out of place among the modest vehicles of their community gathering. The driver's door opened, and Maya's blood ran cold. Tom Blackwood stepped out, looking gaunt and hollow-eyed, his once perfect politician's appearance replaced by the desperate energy of a man with nothing left to lose. "Maya Rodriguez," he called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent patio. "We need to talk." Several of the men at the gathering stepped forward instinctively, forming a protective barrier between Tom and the families. Carlos emerged from the pool house, his jaw set in a way Maya recognized as dangerous. "You're not supposed to be here," Carlos said evenly. "Restraining order, remember." Tom laughed bitterly. "Restraining order? Right. Because I'm the threat here." His eyes swept the gathering, taking in the diverse faces, the mixed families, the scene of genuine community harmony. "Look what you've done to our neighborhood." "What we've done?" Maya stepped forward, ignoring Carlos's warning hand on her arm. "Tom, you and Karen ran a criminal enterprise that targeted families based on race and ethnicity. You defrauded insurance companies, violated federal housing laws, and endangered children. We exposed the truth." "The truth?" Tom's voice climbed higher. "The truth is that this was a good community before you people showed up. Property values were stable, families were safe, children could play without worry, children like Sophia." Maya's voice cut like ice. "Because your wife put her in danger when she sabotaged that fence. Or do you mean children like yours, who learned from your example that some people matter less than others?" Tom's face flushed red. "Don't you dare bring my son into this. Your son who called other kids racial slurs at school. Your son who's been suspended 3 times for bullying children whose families you targeted. That son." The gathering had gone completely silent now, even the children sensing the adult tension. Maya could see phones being discreetly raised, multiple. People recording the confrontation, learning from hard experience that everything needed to be documented. "You destroyed everything," Tom said, his voice breaking. "Karen's in federal prison. My business is bankrupt. My son won't even talk to me. Our house is gone, our friends won't return our calls, and it's all because you couldn't just fit in." Fit in? Maya felt the familiar fire rising in her chest, but this time it was different. This time, she wasn't fighting from a position of isolation and fear. This time, she was surrounded by a community that had chosen to stand with her. "You mean keep quiet while you systematically drove out every family that didn't look like you? Pretend not to notice while you turned our neighborhood into a whites-only enclave? Let you steal from insurance companies and terrorize children?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Tom said, and for a moment, Maya heard something that might have been genuine remorse. "The fence thing was Karen's idea. I thought she was just going to embarrass you, maybe get you to leave voluntarily." "You never thought we'd fight back," Maya finished. "You never thought we'd have allies. You never thought there would be consequences." Tom's shoulders sagged, the fight going out of him as suddenly as it had arrived. "What am I supposed to do now? Everything's gone. My whole life is destroyed." "You're supposed to learn," Judge Harrison said quietly, stepping forward with the authority of his years and experience. "You're supposed to acknowledge what you did wrong, make amends where possible, and do better going forward." "Easy for you to say," Tom shot back. "You're not the one facing federal prison." "No, I'm not. Because I didn't commit federal crimes." Harrison's voice remained calm, implacable. "Your choices led you here, Tom. No one else's." Detective Chen emerged from behind the pool house, her presence explaining how Tom had been allowed to approach despite the restraining order. Maya realized this had been planned, a controlled confrontation designed to give Tom one last chance to confess, to provide information that might help convict his co-conspirators. "Mr. Blackwood," Chen said formally, "I think it's time for you to leave." Tom looked around the gathering one more time, his gaze lingering on the children playing in the pool, the families sharing food and conversation, the scene of community harmony that he and Karen had fought so hard to prevent. "This isn't over," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "Yes, it is," Maya replied quietly. "Your reign of terror is over. The community you tried to destroy is stronger than ever. And the children you sought to hurt are safe and happy. As Tom Blackwood walked back to his car, his shoulders bent with defeat, Maya felt an unexpected emotion, pity. Not forgiveness. What he and Karen had done was unforgivable. But pity for a man who had chosen hatred over humanity and who was now reaping the bitter harvest of those choices. The gathering slowly returned to life around them, conversations resuming, children returning to their games. But Maya noticed something different in the air, a sense of solidarity that hadn't been there before. Tom's appearance had reminded everyone exactly what they were building together and why it mattered. As Detective Chen followed Tom's departure to ensure he left the neighborhood, Eleanor Henderson approached Maya again, Bessie still contentedly wearing her autumn wreath. "You handled that well," the farmer said approvingly. Maya looked out over the gathering, at Judge Harrison helping children with their swimming strokes, at Carlos and several other fathers manning the grill together, at the mix of families who had come together not because they looked alike or earned the same income, but because they shared a commitment to genuine community. "We all handled it well," Maya corrected. "That's what a real community does, it protects its members and stands together against those who would divide us." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pool deck, Maya realized that Tom Black